in overtime. Just saying. Joseph responds to the words, "Do not be afraid." Angels often in Scripture start their message with those words, "Do not be afraid." Sometimes it's, "Don't be afraid of me. Don't be afraid that I am an angel talking to you," like the angel Gabriel. But this angel says, "Do not be afraid of an action. Do not be afraid to do something." And this is in a dream. And God counts on Joseph to hear that angel. Many of us need to be reminded of that over and over again. Do not be afraid. We're not alone. Don't be afraid that there are angels amongst us. Don't be afraid when the angel plants an idea in our mind. I'm, as you could guess, a boomer. You remember McCartney when he wrote yesterday, when he woke up and he had the song in his head. Of course, Google is also the result of a dream. I don't know if it's ever happened to you personally, where somebody's acted on a dream and it's impacted you. When we were driving across Canada, a group of 6 theologues, each in our own car, we drove from Kingston, Ontario, to our various locations. We were going to be summer students. Back in that year, we had 16 weeks of being a summer student. To say we were frightened is to say we used to buy vitamins and put them in a bottle, one for each day, and you'd know that when you got to the bottom of the bottle, it was almost time to go home. It was quite an intimidating prospect. My dad had given me a car, a brand new silver 2-door Capri. I tell you, I felt that I had an angel voice in my dad's ear. So we drove the north shore of Lake Superior. Who's done that route? Do you feel like a little bit you're going to get the sign saying, "Welcome to Newfoundland," right? It just goes on and on. And one morning, we were all staying in one of those little mom and pop hotels, lined up our little rooms. And the intercom phone, we didn't have cells then, in my bedroom went off at about 4:20. And one of the other students said, "I'm waiting for you in the lobby. You wanted to get started early today." Well, I was fully awake then. And so I got dressed, pulled my little black suitcase, and said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, you phoned me that you thought we should get on the road early." Now, we had all gassed up because, there's those signs saying, "Get gas now or prepare to die at the side of the road," which are nerve-wracking. So we were ready to go, and we went and knocked on everybody's door. I said, "But, I didn't say that. I don't believe on being on the road when there's nobody else on the road before dawn." He said, "But you phoned me." And I said, "Did you dream that? Are you waking us up because of a dream?" And it's the only time it's ever happened to me in my life that someone on awakening couldn't distinguish between a dream and reality. And there we were, our little convoy of silver cars driving down the number 1 before the sun rose on that highway. That's quite something. And so when Joseph acts in occurrence and concurring with God's angel, I think, that's not that common. It's not that common that someone hears the call to not be afraid and is able to act anyways. And that's why we do all that bystander training to give us some tools and techniques to help us stand up to bullying and to abuse that we might witness. It's not that common to hear the word, the suggestion, and the invitation, and to know what to do next. This is a prism moment. We've talked all of Advent, of how God's voice is a prism. But this, if you would imagine that beautiful images, we've had so many, with the light, the voice of God coming through, and this time we are that piece of crystal in the middle. That the voice of God is saying to us, "Don't be afraid, but I really need you to be my ambassadors of peace, my ambassador of hope, my ambassador of joy, my ambassador of love. through us those colors on the world. And we might feel like some of the others and say, well, that's asking a great deal. Or we might be encouraged by others like Joseph, who has a dream. Now, I don't think many of us would be already watching television when Martin Luther King Jr. in August of '63 gave his speech. Did anybody see that or hear it reported live? The gremlin in the microphone heard it. I'll just move away. Can somebody take that down? Okay. So in Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, I Have a Dream, you may remember part of that. But don't you think that one of the great gifts is we remember he preached about a dream that would change us, right? That dream would be coming through the prism of our spirits and engaging us, empowering us, and enlightening us that we would then be ambassadors for peace. He dreamed of a day when the people of the world would not be judged by the color of their skin. Some of the language, of course, 2 generations later is different. We use words differently, but the true impact of that speech hasn't changed. That God gave Martin Luther King a dream. That dream was so powerful, he was willing to risk everything, and then everything was taken from him for that dream. We're not likely to be in that same circumstance. But still, the angel says to us, don't be afraid in your own circumstance. Joseph had every reason to say to himself, his family, I don't think that this is going to work with young Mary after all. He didn't want to embarrass her. He didn't want to send her to prison or even have, the possible ramifications of a pregnancy of her circumstance was stoning. He wanted to protect her from that. But he didn't know, understandably, yes, he didn't know if he wanted to make that lifelong commitment. It's a huge thing to roll your life down beside someone else's in the best of circumstances. These weren't them. These were difficult circumstances. We're talking about the sacred people in this story. We understand there are days when we're like Joseph. We can maybe see the kind thing to do, but we're caught. Or we can see the just thing to do, but we're hesitant. And then we feel that empowering love that allows us to do just the next right thing. We don't have a whole big footprint in front of us. We don't have a blueprint of a mile wide, but the very next right thing may be all we're capable of doing, and at that moment, that next right thing is blessed. That's being a sacred person, and we're not comfortable with that language. We were talking earlier about the history of the church, is that we have had so many times when the church has been telling us that we're not worthy. Work harder to attract the loving attention of God and clean up your act lest something really bad, think hell, happens to you. We've worked hard to say the reliable picture of God is a God of grace, a God of mercy, a God of peace and love and joy, and a God of hope. And so now we come to the last Sunday, all our candles are lit. And with humility, we're asked to claim for ourselves the title of sacred person. You go, with all we've done, with all we haven't done, yes. With our regrets for actions taken and our regrets for actions not taken, God still sees in us something pure and possible and bursts into our very souls with a light that invites us to act in ways that spew a colorful rainbow across the world, a rainbow of all the spiritual values. And that is what it means to be a sacred person in the footsteps, yes, of Joseph and Mary, as hard as that is to reconcile with some of our earlier teachings. And so this Sunday, this last Sunday of Advent, we're invited to look at these flames, to think of the words. The words are always going to be, do not be afraid. I am with you. This idea, this pulse, this love, this nudging is one I will accompany as it manifests itself in the Advent values that will color our world with the next right thing. May it be so for us. Amen.